Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Auzubillah shaitan rajim, may God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabb ighfirli, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins I'm conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, may God guide us to the direct path. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another lecture. You're listening to a lecture by a Muslim futurist. As a Muslim, I believe that we are in a world, in an existential system. There's a system admin. The system admin does not have any partner equivalent in the world. That means nothing in this simulation we're in can suggest the truth that's outside of it. Sorry, not can suggest, can be the truth outside of it. I believe we're simulated beings in a specific simulated testing zone within a divine surveillance state. But what the divine surveillance state roots back to is how there's a divine law to natural law. But anyways, I don't want to get that deep into it. But I just wanted to explain to you that yes, you're seeing me as a user in a system, and this system has mods in the simulation. But for all those spiritual people, spiritual people are truly weird. Okay, they're even like divinely weird, right? um, but anyways, where I'm going with this is that yes, I do consider in the same way I look at ants that we could be ants, and there's a higher power to the system. Okay, I treat myself as a simulated being. Everything about human life is simulated, and there's an original position prior to the simulation. So that's me explaining to you how I'm a Muslim. How I'm a futurist is because I have lived around 12,000 days. So 12,000 days I've logged into this video game called life. And I've gotten bored. It happens after you play like 12,000 levels, 12, you respawn 12,000 times. Do you know? I play this multiplayer online game sometimes called League of Legends, just this one specific character in that game. And the whole point of that game is anytime you die, you respawn. And to me, it's like every day I wake up, the ego of that day dies and a new ego respawns in the next morning. Okay, to the degree that I have become convinced that we are not just objects and subjects. And if you understand this, write something in the chat section, folks. I was going to ask you to subscribe, but I stopped myself. All right, let's dive into this. It's a beautiful day in the presence of God and God's creation. As one of God's creations, I shall speak honorably. So, I wanted to talk about something very fascinating. As I also share this song that I found yesterday that's been stuck in my mind. This song you're going to hear in the background, guys, it's just automatically become my favorite song in existence currently. So, it's going to play in the background. And it's gonna take you to a place of pure imagination, literally. But but anyways, I want to try to somehow talk over this as if this was like the sound of the battlefield, and in some sense there's someone was coming to looking at the human army as a human soldier and being like, wait a minute, guys, the general that we need to take orders from is our capability of how aware we can become of our future. You see, this discussion is about nature of reality and also about how reality is functioning now. And so you are listening to someone who is actually a very silly person when it comes to taking the outer realm seriously. But what I have done is that I have noticed that was taking shape in two spaces. So, in this lecture today, I'm going to explain the difference between like what happens when a person's emotional life doesn't align with their logical life. And this is very important to consider. But the way I'm telling it to you is that I'm treating you as soldiers in the battlefield, but not soldiers of a war of like physical destruction. Every human being on this earth, before they are a personality, they are an advanced system of intelligence being conscious of reality. And so, because I have not forgotten that fact, human beings are not just humans, they are the greatest capability of this awareness that is their container. And so, there has been moments in my mind, if you fathom someone is speaking, there's a train passing by, guys, give it a couple minutes. You see, folks, it's about the effort of consciousness in anywhere at all. And so, as a human being, as a member of my species, you might think from one angle, yeah, it's just some dude giving a podcast, but you don't understand. I am actually immortalizing my voice in cyberspace. So there is a chance that, not there's a chance, probably I will pass away, but these talks, I will continue to talk forever to the cosmos. So it is very important. The ideas that, in some sense, flow through the awareness that we are, the recognition of being an object and subject at the same time, leads to a ridiculous clarity that you'll one day wake up and be like, yo, man, this podcaster had a point. There's 100% a different way we could have looked at it the whole time. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how good you are, how evil you are. I don't know how smart you are, how foolish you are. I don't know how vicious you are, how gentle you are. But I know one thing, that when I look in the mirror, what I see is a very unique geometry. And this geometry, just like you see the letter A, you see the letter B, C, you can discriminate in the same way. When I look in the mirror, I am seeing a very unique creature in the alphabet of creaturehood in existence. Okay, and so we are not just some sleeping automated program, we are conscious that we are happening. And so is the world, and the unknown stares at us through everything. And yet we cling on to the known as if knowledge defines us in a verb. A known noun can never replace an unknown verb. And but guess where you are? So, dear viewers, listen to me. It is about the human effort. It is about the ability of human consciousness to surpass its ideological enslavement. And you're going to be like, yo, what are you saying, Mr. Within? Are we enslaved by our ideas? And I will be like, no, it's not like you're enslaved by your ideas. It's that you think you are your ideas, and you're trying to figure out what an idea is enslaved by. And what you don't realize is that you, even though you are one being of expression as a unit, there are many dimensions to you. And you might think this is a compliment, but it's a fact. You see, if somebody was like, Mr. Within, are you a teacher? I'll be like, I don't know. Is like that person who grabs a sword and runs at the army that's heading towards them before anyone else does, a teacher? You're like, sure, you know because what I am fighting is not anyone alive right now. You understand? Because I have an how do I say it, not a realm of pure imagination. I would say it is a mercy of the system admin. You see, something has shifted. I began to realize that language was trying to enslave me, but I did not even let me to enslave me. And it's that moment when you realize every day of your life that you have changed. There has been a part of you watching it, an unknown witness behind the edge of your eyes that knows that it cannot know itself fully. And it's okay. Because let me tell you what's more beautiful than failure. You know, it's to be true in whatever you do. You don't understand. We're in an epistemic entropic state as a species. Do you know what that means? That means that as we go into the future and as we are in this era of hyper information transmissions, what is going to happen is that we're going to lose an ability. The human species' biggest danger is its ability to lose um, uh, being able to discriminate between what is true and false. Do you understand? It's like, for me, if they're like, what war is more important than like the Ukraine and Russia war, or the Palestine and Israel war, like what's more important than this? I would say what's more important is how a species is acting divide and conquered when behind its eyes it realizes we all, the original common denominator, the foundational source of everyone, is that you are an unknown soul. It's going to take a while to adjust to it, but you are. And what we define the soul as is the seat of awareness that has been witnessing the body and its thoughts change. So if you're something that has noticed something's like your body change, you've noticed your mind change, guess what hasn't changed? The awareness to change. And that is a clue to the soul. But what the soul is not God. And so I have many wars to fight, in accordance to how I'm speaking. You don't think of it this way. Think of it this way: if everybody in 2025 hated me, I would still keep doing what I'm doing. Let me tell you why. Because I'm not speaking just for this era. People in 2025, are kind of still in the historic era, where in the future generations they're going to be like, yo man, our ancestors made mistakes. You believe that? They were still making mistakes. We're going to be like historic. It's like, yo, man, there was a time where people hold technology in their hands. In the future, they're going to be like, our brains were born with technology in them, you know? And we're going to laugh, because they're not going to realize how in our silliness we weren't that grateful for it. But I am grateful for my silliness. You don't understand. Silliness has saved my life, you know? More than times I can save the world. That's how silly it is. You don't understand. Sorry, guys. It was on mute. I don't know how long it was on mute, but it happens, and I'm gonna keep going because I'm in a good mood. Okay. So I was saying, viewers, you don't understand that we are not standing under a world or a cosmos. We are standing under the greatest opportunity of consciousness for the first time in history, gifted by the system admin an ability to navigate and function a biological technology that can lead to so many other technologies. You don't understand. You're the golden goose, but you're in some sense, I've denied yourself a mirror. And my aim is to usher forth the most advanced movement in human history. I don't care. I'm just like, somebody has to try it, because for me to see what an advanced civilization would look like, it's as if like if I was like me now, if I was a little kid, they'd be like, hey, like Santa Claus in the mall would be like, what do you want for Christmas, little kid? And I'd like to stop epistemic entropy for the human species, and advance civilization and begin to see what the most advanced possibility of human consciousness is. And Santa's like, maybe next year, kid. Santa's like, yeah, I'll make that dream come true in a million years. And to be honest, I shouldn't say that word. Let me tell you why. Because it took me a while to realize, if you write the letters, I like, as a Muslim, guys, as a kid, because I was raised in Canada, I would celebrate Christmas, but I don't celebrate Christmas anymore. You know, because it says the word Christmas, but you're actually, the mind of the young child is connecting to this, becoming comfortable with the idea of this red dressed character, that if you spell the letters differently, it wouldn't be different than Satan. Santa Claus is Satan, guys. but it just has a beard on. I mean, it's like another simulation of that idea, right? So it's like, it's a kind of diabolical thing, Christmas. I don't know. I don't want to say the cheer and all of this is not. If it was about Christ, that would have been different. But it's about this dude named Santa Claus, right? So it's kind of like, I think it's not even honoring Christ's name. Christmas is a tradition that doesn't honor Christ. It honors some like random dude, some dude like generating gifts. It's honestly like, I think Santa Claus, is the byproduct of a blind capitalistic system. Anyways, folks, jokes aside, but reality considered, this lecture requires me explaining to you as if I was explaining to my younger and future selves, to my past and future selves, and everybody, even in the presence of the creator, how would I give this idea justice? Okay. So the title is When Our Emotional Lives Don't Match Our Logical Lives. Okay. So we have to look at, what does it mean that I'm living an emotional life right now? And what does it mean that I'm living a logical life right now? That means I'm talking to a species that is fundamentally, biologically, organically divided into like male and female. And whether people agree or not, culturally, women are more comfortable with emotional expression and men are more comfortable with logical expression. And both are important roles that once both calibrate, pretty much the idea is human beings advance each other by having qualities more advanced than each other. So I think this should be considered because the culture is playing out a film and the characters in the film have different roles and permissions. Okay? So now I'm as a man talking about like my emotional life and how it doesn't match my logical life. And the thing is, the only way I can say it, because now emotions have become meaningless to me. Not that I'm not emotional, like I'm trying to live like a robot. No, that's not it. Emotions are important, but it's also important why they are there. And to become a responsible soul is like being conscious of the content of your awareness. You see, the point of life is not ignoring or even fearing our limitations and weaknesses. The whole point of life is that it's showing you probabilities and it's also giving you choice. That's the incredible thing about this world. I can choose to give a lecture. I can choose to look at life in a new way. I can choose to consider what the context of it all is. But at the same time, I can also choose to be honest. And in my pure honesty, I cannot ignore the fact that I did not create this world. I did not create its shape and how much of life should just fill out my emotional expectation. So let me tell you this. This gets super interesting. So let's just start off anew with this context that every person is living an emotional life and every person is living a logical life. And if they're like, Mr. Within, how are you saying this? I'll be like, guys, it's not a big deal. The brain is considered, even though I treat the brain through systems thinking as a whole structure, right? Holistic structure. But, anyways, and the way they're teaching it to kids nowadays, you know, is pretty much that, hey, your brain has two hemispheres. The left side of your brain is in some sense affecting the right side of your body, and the right side of your brain is affecting the left. The left side is analytical, the right side is creative. So in some sense, your emotional life is like the other side of the coin, how this whole thing could be a creative value, and the other side is in some sense how it could be an analytical value. Okay. So you as a human being have an ability to look upon yourself in different ways, to the degree that in modern culture we have this term, the expressions like don't look down on yourself or look up to your, hypothetical older brother. It's like, okay. In reality, what the nature of man is trying to do is that you were born in a system, you are capable, and you cannot ignore this feeling of what could I have done as a member of the human species before I left the world room. And so it's like, how much louder can the lion's roar get? Existence has called you forth, and you are in this system. And I get it, and it's not that complicated. Ultimately, what it is that everybody is a character in a system, is a player in this system. Okay, you're a character in a story, you're a concept in a context, and this context of reality is like imagination that doesn't change. It's fixed geometry. So on some level we are looking at it. Yeah, sure, I'm a biological organism, I get hungry, you know. What I have, in some sense, I need to find food, like eat food, drink water, build shelter, regulate temperature, procreate, everything. Do you understand? So I'm not ignoring how I'm being a physical biological organism, but I'm saying, yo, this whole time I've been looking at what's in front of my eyes, and I have never asked myself, where does the meaning to it come from? And the meaning comes from, guess what? Within you. And what is within you is a seat of awareness that from the beginning of your life till now has been the manager of your heartbeat. So what I mean is that your heart has been beating endlessly, and you're like, heart, why are you working so hard? And the heart's like, you kidding, bro? And your heart's like, it's because awareness does it. It works harder than me. Ladies and gentlemen, you're an advanced technology. You're also a member of the human species. You're also living in civilization 1.0, which is humanity's best prototype. And when you look at the foolishness of the past, you're like, oh, kids, even though, like, to me, this is what it is. Like, the past was always foolish and the future was amazing. The idea is that how should human beings behave in 2025? And we're going to the point of, like, okay, they this advanced system that the human is has like emotional regulation, and it has logical regulation, and even though they're two brain hemispheres, but it's the frontal lobe, yo. We can't, like, if the brain was a Godfather movie, you know the Godfather would be the frontal lobe, you know and the hypothalamus would be the conciliary or something, or I don't know, Michael Corleone or something. Godfather was such a spiritual, like, not spiritual, a sort of transcendental film. There was a scene where Vito Corleone looks at Michael Corleone in the garden, and he just says one word, which I think crushed, like deep down crushed Michael's soul, but he was so professional in handling it. And he said that it was like Senator Corleone, and it was he was saying to his, like, it's like he was pretty much telling Michael Corleone to get out of hell. And you see that at the end of Godfather 3, he can't, because he acted too comfortable with hell. Do you know? It's crazy film. But anyways, folks, where I'm going with this is that it is now time for us as a species to wonder about the emotional life of the self, but also the emotional life of our species. Okay, and I'm gonna bring the notepad here. If you're driving, don't look at the screen. If you aren't driving, look at the screen, I guess. Okay, folks. So I want you to look at the screen, and we're gonna dive into it. Okay, and I'm gonna explain to you we're going to we're gonna look at this lecture. Oh my god. Okay, there we go. Okay, so when our emotional lives don't match our logical lives. Okay, so when our emotional lives don't match our logical lives, I'm going to show you guys my method of anybody, any conceptual sequence anybody puts in front of me. How do I decode it? Okay. So, pretty much, I try to first look at something without caring about my own emotions and thoughts, just to practice raw looking. It's like pure sight. Practice like purely looking at something to the degree that you can notice different thoughts bouncing off through its subcontext. Okay. So, right now in this sentence, when our emotional lives don't match our logical lives, so we look at it, it's like, okay, what do we mean by emotion? Okay, I think this was the first historic sneeze I've ever had in a lecture. So, what does emotion mean? What does life mean? What do we mean? What does the word lives mean? See here, I'm going to highlight it. So, we look at this, we highlight this as a concept, we highlight this as a concept. Technically, all of it are concepts, but I'm like, so to me, here, I'll say first view. Okay. My first view is that, okay, the question is pointing to an emotional life and a logical life. Now, how can the human being, this is the second view I have on it, the second wave of thought. Now, how can a human being have an emotional and logical life, and how are they positioned in the expression of intelligence? Okay, this is the question that comes to my mind after looking at the geometry of this. So I'm really like, okay, so the title is saying when our emotional lives don't match our logical lives. So it's talking about two dimensions to the human perception. Okay, one dimension is regulated by emotions, the other is regulated by information, logic, and sequencing, information sequencing and processing. Okay, so now the question is diving deeper and seeing, like, now how can a human being have an emotional life and how are they positioned in the expression of intelligence. So the question is going to the third view, and the third view is what? The third view of what is the human intelligence, what is the human intelligence at all from the beginning, really? What is their intelligence at all from the beginning, really? Okay. So, what is the human intelligence? Now, this is where the fourth view. I've kind of climbed this mountain before, so I can talk about its peak and where you even need wings. So, I would say human intelligence is about the idea of what is the human situation. And guys, I'm just gonna go into the analysis here, into a personal analysis. I mean, it's all personal, I guess, but so this is how I compartmentalize it. The human equals an outer life plus an inner life. Okay? This is how I've simplified it. This is how I would if I have I don't have children, but if I had children in the future, I would explain the human intelligence in this way. Okay, that it's like, hey kid, you have an inner life and you have an outer life. Okay, and most human beings are raised and conditioned in this system to extract value, to need clarification of value from their outer life. Okay, this is why some people are stuck in whirlpools or cycles of attention. You see that all over Instagram, really. You kind of are seeing the mutation of natural beauty through the psychological aspect of it in modern times. But anyways, my personal analysis is this, guys, that we have a human being and we start from the eyes of the human being. Okay, and what's in front of your eyes is your outer realms, but the human being is so mysterious that when you close your eyes, like whoever you are right now, close your eyes, and I'm going to tell you, remember the food, the image of the food you ate yesterday. And if you can do that, it means light was not entering your eyes, and your biological eyes were closed, and yet you could still see. Now, where you were seeing is what I term the inner realm, and that's your inner life. So your inner life is the relationship of your awareness that sees your mind and body. Your outer life tends to, in the way we tell people, to be the relationship of our body with a story of itself. Right? So in front of your eyes, that's the outer realms. Behind your eyes, that's the inner realms. In front of your eyes, you're living an outer physical life. It's like a multiplayer online game. There's 8 billion other people like you here, right? That's the outer life. And then the inner life is a private, like how we have a unique DNA, and there's some things that only we could ever see, you know? So the inner life is very important to consider because emotion has to do with how do we process our inner life. Our logical life has to do with how we process our outer life. So you as a human being, sure, they've convinced you you're just one person, you're just this one idea of you, and this one idea of you has to do everything in the sequences of like A, B, C, D, E. But that's not. You're way more advanced as that than that as a being. We're designed to be multidimensionally aware because in order to survive evolutionarily, even considering, right, we had to be aware of everything. We had to be aware of danger. We had to scan the environment. We had to be aware of being able to adjust. And the whole point of evolution is that something abstract was inspiring it. This is what no biological evolutionist can ever admit, that it was the abstract vision of if I do this, maybe I can survive better, that was leading evolution, that was sculpting evolution. The force that was sculpting evolution was the ability of the creature to envision a future that it survived in. Do you understand? So I'm saying it was an abstract ability to fathom probabilities to what could happen to the moment in the future that made the human being be able to survive. So it was poetically the spirit of the future that carved evolution, that sculpted evolution, right? So it means it was an abstract inner event. An abstract inner verb was like allowing the noun to survive, the outer noun, physical noun to survive. Okay. Yo, we have people in the chat section. There's activity. Guys, sometimes when I give these talks, I feel like, I'm like this astronaut that's stepping on a new planet for the first time. And anything that happens in the chat section, I'm like, Houston or whatever. I'll be like, yo, intergalactic place that hired me to explore this planet. I'm seeing activity here. What I'm saying is like, discovering life on Mars, the same fascination as seeing the chat section. Anyways, folks, we're gonna look into this deeper. I'm pretty much trying to explain as honestly as I can because I want to update the system. You don't understand. Honesty is not just for yourself. It's not like be honest and just go to heaven. It's that if we are not true to how we're originally a life force here, then we have failed ourselves. So the most immediate actions of the human being is a sort of restoration of self integrity. That you realize you're not just your name, you're not just the story that only you think you are. You are a member of the human species, and the human species has a legacy greater than any of us can imagine. That means it's like religious people, they are honoring this, the in some sense, the king of kings, or the supremacy of the supreme, or another way of saying it is the system admin that is beyond the simulation, or the singularity beyond reality, that is attracting all of reality, as if something original simulated a world, and that world knows it has nowhere else to go aside from return to the original. And so it's like the fear of the simulated dissolves in the faith of the higher power. Why? Because you realize in your own world, being alive means you're attending an unknown event. And when I say the human being has an outer life, inner life, I'm just telling you, it's like we're like, imagine like there's this battlefield, okay? And like suddenly out of nowhere, this army that's outnumbered, suddenly their allies, like imagine like a million Iron Man suits, like, all glowing with like unique colors, just descend from the clouds, and that's like the counter army. Do you know what I mean? So I'm saying in the same way, it's not like that imagery, but 8 billion eyes have opened on this planet for a reason. Now, what is the point? And so we need systems of administration, and we fundamentally have to ask, what is the head of the snake? In like Sun Tzu, Art of the War, in ancient militaristic tactic, strategy and tactics, they had this idea that disconnect the general from his army, and you, in some sense, have defeated that army. You know, and it's the same thing for humanity. If they disconnect us from the original true values of life, they have in some sense defeated us. And I'm not saying they as if it's like evil is stronger than good. It's kind of like I'm not talking in a world with infinite possibilities. I'm not judging good or evil. I'm just trying to say that to be a human being is to experience a dynamic system. Okay, you're an you know scientists, by not being by perspective of the soul and consciousness, are missing out on so much like next level experimentation. Because in the same way that you can treat yourself, like, how do I say it, it's like you can ask the question as a scientist, or you can ask the question as an awareness to all thought forms at all. You understand? So the human being has an inner life and outer life. Now we look at the word emotional life and logical life. So I'm going to write it here. Emotional life, emotional life, logical life. Guys, imagine I just started talking about the emotional and logical life of dolphins. You know what I mean? Even dolphins would be like, what? Okay, so the emotional life, all right? What is one's emotional life? My emotional life has to do with what I expect to happen that doesn't. I think that's a good way of saying it. Emotional life is the future possibilities of superior emotions we could have. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, the ego is so much smarter than nature. Let me tell you what it's doing. Your human intelligence is utilizing this ability to separate itself from the world to be able to consider a context to reality at all. Okay. And the context is starting a world. And when you're, so I'm saying you're this intelligence, okay, and this intelligence system is functioning under this code. I'm a self in a world, in an unknown world. And what are the ways that I, right? And so this is where you might think that you're just living in 2025, but your mind is living in the future. Your mind lives ahead of your body. They don't teach this, but this is how it happens. You're sitting watching TV, you suddenly get thirsty. In your mind, you've already opened the fridge door and you just walk and do it. So the mind is faster than the body in living life, right? But the whole point of it is that because the mind is faster, it lives ahead and it finds potential. For example, man, woman, it doesn't matter. Anybody could be walking on the street and see someone else, and their brain suddenly simulates a future reality with that person. The brain can do that. So the emotional life has to do with how we expect our inner life to happen. Now somebody would be like, Mr. Within, give us an example of an inner life expectation. And I'll be like, all right, challenge accepted. And the inner life, an example of like an expectation for the inner life. So right now, I'm a human being in 2025. I'm sitting in a car giving this lecture. This car is like, temporary studio for me. And I'm giving this lecture. Now, I ask myself, in like 100 years, could I, if somebody like me existed, right, and wanted to do the same thing, could they be doing it in a flying car? Imagine I'm like, it's too noisy here. I'm gonna fly like vertically. I'm gonna press a button in my like self-automated car, you know, and it's gonna go like 100 meters, imagine, into the sky, or more, like 200 meters into the sky. And I'm like, hey everybody, welcome to today's lecture from the sky. You know what I mean? So that's a possibility that's not possible now in 2025, but my mind fathomed a probability to the future. Now I can imagine how it feels like to be like 100 meters above the sky in a car. I could imagine how that feels. 200 meters, I don't know how accurate I can imagine. You know? So I can imagine 100 meters, my car being in the air. That gives me an emotion. Now imagine I somebody's like, hey man, get in my car. And I'm like, can your car fly? And the person's like, that technology doesn't exist, man. And I'll be like, no, man, you've offended me emotionally. Do you know what I mean? My emotional expectation has not been met. Do you know what I mean? And so you've thrown my emotional life into turmoil for not having a flying car that doesn't exist yet. Do you see what I mean? An expectation of that your inner life is way more advanced, way more arrogant, way more intense, way more able than whatever story you've chosen to use as a mask in this masquerade party called being humans on Earth. Okay, and we have to deal with this, and this is our era, right? That means it's like, yo man, what do I do after I've become responsible for all the problems of my self existence? It's like, yo man, once you're done with yourself, what else is there? Look around, and guess what? You find the species. Oh man. Guys, I'm gonna get a tattoo. If somebody's like Mr. Within, first of all, as a Muslim, I've never been inclined to ever get a tattoo because I always felt like my body hair was enough. You know, but it's just that the thing I'm saying is that if I was to get a tattoo, it would probably be like, my YouTube channels, like, you know, URL. Anyways, see, guys, that's what happens. People don't care for the personal. You all want to hear me talk about the cosmos. You don't care how I feel. But that's how it should be. Let me tell you why. Because the cosmos is so much more fascinating than our individual realities. And so, as a human being, having some sort of ability to share some with the inner geometry behind my eyes. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is that your emotional life has to do with what you're expect with the imagine. Okay. So, imagine you. So, here, I'm going to come here and I'm going to write something. Look at the screen if you can. So, your inner life, all right, equals, and we have an outer life here. There's more to the equations, okay? These philosophical equations. Some mathematics are like, some mathematicians are probably like looking at me like, you know, apply mathematics to like concepts, and they're like, all right, man, he's doing something new. Let him keep going. So we have an inner self, yo, and we have an inner world. This cannot be ignored, and I will explain this. I have been doing for a while. And their outer life has an outer self plus an outer world. Okay. Now, guess what? The outer world is unknown. You don't know it. Accept it. Like none of us know the edge of the world. You know, we can't index the whole cosmos to come with accurate numbers. With accurate measurements. So we're in an unknown world, and the unknown world is like a verb. Okay, that's the best thing to say. It's an unknown verb. Now your outer self is not an unknown verb. Your outer self is a known noun. Okay. So right now I know my physical biological body, and I'm like, it's a body. I'm somebody. Imagine we go into that scene, somebody. Even the train's interrupting me now. Anyways, so your outer life is like how you're a physical self in a physical world, but the world can be seen as a noun and a verb. And if you see it as a verb, it can be seen as past, present, future. Okay, that's basic. This is basic, like, very basic stuff I'm saying to you. Okay, so if you assume you know it, you're closer than if you don't assume you know it. Whew, back to it. So, guys, to keep going, sorry about that. So, the outer life is your outer self, and outer world. Now, guess what happens? Your inner self is actually a known verb. It can be seen as a noun. You can choose to be like, yeah, man, this is my name and this is who I am and this is my personality. You can choose to archetypally categorize yourself. Okay. But I think the mechanics of the outer life are very different than the direct experiential mechanics of the inner life, the inner realms. And I've spent like a decade of my life trying to explain the inner realms to reality. But the reason I've been doing that is because it is implying this ability of being able to see the future. You know what I notice sometimes. I'm some person who is because I think deep down I'm a designer. I think my heart has fallen in love with the design of existence, and so to uncover in this unknown verb different sectors of how reality is happening. You don't understand. I have a fascination for the most advanced expression of systems. You might not believe it, but most people I meet, they never know it. But in my mind, I wonder what the most advanced version of them is. It's like my mind just does it instantly. Okay, what would the most advanced version of this person look like? Do you know? You don't understand. The inner realms has to do with your ability to be able to notice two ideas being separate from one another. But in the outer realms, it's all about your ability to realize that you're different from the world. When you're young, they judge you for being different, but when you get older, you realize that's your genius they're judging. You're a genius because nothing like you has existed before. Nothing in this world has your DNA. You have eyes that see something that no one else does. Technically, anybody can be a writer, and everybody is if they choose to write. Anybody can be a public speaker if they choose to speak. And the easiest way to go about it is to just be honest about it all, because that's progress, right? So we tackle epistemic entropy by being honest. Now, to be honest about one's inner life is to be like, okay, I'm noticing my biological body, but because I can close my eyes and visual still see, it means the mind is like a room over this room. Do you understand? It's kind of like hilariously like your body is like this physical thing. Your mind is like this ideological overlay, but it's more intelligent than the body. Now, if somebody's like, Mr. Within, what do you mean the mind is more intelligent than the body? Isn't it all just one being? And I'll be like, yes, but you see, it's like you telling me, isn't that just one tree? But if you zoom into it, it's atoms. If you zoom in, it's electrons. If you zoom in, it's quarks. If you zoom in at some people theorize it's strings. It's like we reach to a point where we need philosophers to come and explain what's the difference between a wave and a particle. So we have reached a point in life right now where you have to be conscious that just like a camera can zoom in and out, the brain can see fractal geometry. And this isn't some new age thing. It just means that the brain is functioning over through neural patterns, and it can see these patterns in the small and the big. That's what it means. So what I'm saying is you can see the secrets of the cosmos in the atom, and you can see the secrets of the atoms, in the cosmos. That's what it really means. It means the secrets are linked. It means that that the edge of the simulation is truth, but truth is not simulated. So how can the simulated know it? So, anyways, where I'm going with this is your emotional life has to do with your inner life, okay? And your outer life has to do with your logical life. Okay, your logical life has to do with, regardless of how you feel, what is going to physically happen to this life I'm experiencing. Do you understand? It's the physical logistics. That means a person can be like, yo, man, do you know, I could be as spiritual as I want, do you know, but I still need to eat food. I still need to enter the economy of values and try to position myself in a better value. But what is the ultimate objective of all values in the human mind? Do you know that means it's not about just wondering, yo, man, what does life to me mean? What does life mean to me? It's like you're not just at that, like, sorry, like, child's play level. You're thinking that, yo, what if 8 billion human beings wondered about what life means at the same time? And because they have different DNAs, obviously it's starting from a perspective where everybody disagrees with one another. So agreement is the achievement, right? So we're trying to find what is the common denominator to all human experiences in this life, right? And so, on some level, it is consciousness, the deep answer, but the surface answer of it is it's our human design. So, the logical life has to do with the destiny of human design within world design, within divine command. Okay, divine will. So, the destiny of human design within world design. Logic is about, like, it's honestly like a chess game. In front of my eyes, believe it or not, physical reality is a chess game. It's just a chess game where it's all about where the values are, how the values are being contextualized, which means, like, whenever you see something of meaning, of value, that value is being generated in the moment. And how do we know this? Because every night we go to sleep and all the regenerations of the day are kind of like, they sleep as well. And so the nature of man is that we're not here to be a 24/7 entity with pure energy and everything. It's like we cannot expect Earth to be heaven. Earth is somewhere between, like, an angelic heaven and a beastly hell. Okay? So we're somewhere in between. We're civilized, but some of us are still savage. And we have to ask what the actual game we're playing here is. You see, let me tell you, the biggest cause of modern psychosis is, I think, 60% of, like, evil on the planet is a misunderstanding. What I mean by this is that, in some sense, it's the lack of being valued that makes you okay to devalue. I suffered from this, but I was too shy to devalue others, so I would endlessly devalue myself. Like, I think by the age of 10, I mastered devaluing myself, you know? To the degree where, like, I was so quiet. I think even if somebody asked me, "Hey, what's wrong?" I would still be quiet. But this doesn't mean the mind wasn't training for something. I think that the life everybody has lived, it has trained you for something. It has, you are a human design, which means you have human utility. The value of your eyes in a world unknown is to know it in you. For me, when if somebody says, Mr. Within, what image do you see in your inner realms when you hear the idea of advancing humanity? I would say the great march. I see it, it's as if 8 billion beings suddenly noticing something so important that they're all walking towards there. Do you know? So to me, I thought, like, okay, you have a bunch of egocentric, like 8 billion egocentric entities, egocentric centered, entities, ego-centered entities. And what how do you build an advanced civilization with 8 billion beings that can't agree with one another? And you know what I realized that the proof of my solution was already happening in reality. I was like, wait a minute, 8 billion people, like, on imagine, like, you have, like, a group of people, you when you see society, what is causing people to act civilized? I thought this to be an incredible question, because when you look at human history, we were savages. Okay, there was, like, some dark savageness that the modern world, children born in the future generations who haven't read history, you have no freaking clue how effed up this world could be. Now, from that savageness, suddenly in 2025, everybody's acting civilized. Neighbors are smiling at each other. Do you know, like people are helping each other? Why? And I realize it's because it doesn't matter if they're theist or atheist, they all treat the law as a higher power than them. So that means human beings, what administers them is the higher ideal. Do you understand? And now the question is, what is that central value that all human beings align to and everything suddenly coordinates? It's that to know truth is to realize truth is beyond the system. To understand truth is to realize your life is happening at the same time where every other life is happening. You don't understand. Do you know what it means that there is God? People think it's just an idea you can put in the shelf of your awareness and forget about. The idea of God is so important because it is suggesting that your calculations on reality are not the final determinator of reality. You don't understand what God means. God means you are the lower power, but it's okay. You shouldn't try to ignore what you are. It's sometimes you cannot even activate your abilities if you don't accept what you are. You have to accept it. You can't. It's like if I don't accept my body, I can't walk. You know. So to some degree, I have to accept my life form and my life force. But what is truly moving all of it is a deeper relationship than a character in a story. So my emotional life right now is based on what is being preserved as a value and how this value changes. If it changes beyond my control, then it's like I get emotional. If it changes with my control but find discovers something new, I get emotional. There's been times that I've been thinking about something and I'm like, yo man, look at me just casually sitting down, drinking a cup of tea and just thinking deeply about something. And I would just think about something deeply to a point where the thought would open up to an image and a film like scenario, and then the film like scenario would reveal an archetype that when I thought of my relationship with that identify, I was blissed out in tears already. So a person's emotional life, okay, is what they truly know their potential is and what truly is denied. Do you understand? That means you become emotional when something that should be maintained is denied. That tends to be what it is. But for me, it took me a while to realize when they say understand your own emotions. See, folks, for me personally, um, I it took me a while to understand my own emotional life, and the biggest problem with my emotional life was that I did not think my emotions mattered. And I had kind of, believe it or not, become somebody who nothing would offend. Even if I had emotional turbulence, it didn't matter. It was like, does it matter if it rains? Do you know what I mean? So, my emotional life, I was raised not to really care for it. But then there was something that I couldn't ignore. I realized that at some point in my life, I realized that I was living life for the first time too. that I had judged myself with a sort of abstract, unrealistic perfection, not realizing that it is okay to exist. It is okay to be a being. It took me a while to understand that that's okay. I thought pretty much the society when I was young, I thought society was just this system and you had to behave in a certain way and it was kind of like a, key into a lock kind of situation, right? It was something you would unlock behaviorally, but later on I began to understand that my emotions are how I have cared to look at myself at all. And at some point, I snapped out of my misery. I snapped out of my inferiority complex. I snapped out of all those moments that I felt shame because I couldn't activate myself as a being. And I realized it's okay. To me, when I look at my past, like if somebody asked me if you had a time machine right now and you could go to the past, what would you do? I would just go in the past and probably look at myself and we'd both just stare at each other and laugh and I'd smack myself in the head, you know, and I'd be like I'd just laugh even louder, and then I'd hug myself and I'd dip. You know what I mean? No words needed. I would say the closest thing to it would be that scene in who's that guy? Oh my god, who are those actors? Oh my god, who are those actors? I forget their name. Catch Me If You Can, that scene where the parents, after they leave the principal's office, how the father looks at the son. Do you know what I mean? So it took me a while to understand no, in order to activate yourself as an advanced being, you cannot ignore your emotional dimensions. And I realized my emotional dimensions were all because of a lack of inner freedom. It was as if in my outer realms, God had been merciful to me, but in my inner realms, I had exiled myself. Do you understand what I mean? That means imagine something freaking you out when you're young and you just don't want to participate in anything. So I eventually reached a point where I reached a point pretty much where now if you ask me, not only can I have closure with my past, present, and future of myself, even with my death, I have some sort of closure. Okay? That at some point I will leave this realm. And my strategy to it has been like, okay, choose wisely how to live. So at some point, I think it's in the nature of human beings to disconnect with what they don't understand, you know? And it doesn't mean everybody has a mature emotional life, but I think the sign of emotional maturity is when you're no longer worried about your own emotions. You've surpassed yourself. In these lectures of mine, you hear me talking about there's four levels, okay, to human life. Level one is the speech, is the self, okay? So there's four levels to this earth game. Level one, the self, all right? So what is it about the self? That means if anybody, whenever, imagine this, if somebody's talking to you, right, and you're like, why aren't they asking me about my emotions and my thoughts? That means you're stuck in level one, okay? Those beings who make it to level two is the species, okay? So that means you're no longer fascinated by your problems and solutions. You're no longer fascinated by your own emotions and thoughts. you're now noticing that there's 8 billion other versions of them. Currently, there's 8 billion variations to the human experience. Just with my ability to confront tent with the inevitable. Okay. And because I've kind of like, I don't know why, years later, I realized the way I was like with my whole shyness and introversion, the conclusion I had come to was the same as the samurai in the book Hagakure Bushido. They're told to that if you are dead, if you treat yourself like you're not, like there's no, you're dead already, right, then you have nothing to, no fear of losing anything, right? This doesn't mean physically dying. It just means that if there is no, if you are hollow, there's nothing to die. For me, the sign of intelligence is the ability to ask questions that care for a deeper, like a deeper understanding. That's the greatest sign of intelligence, because answers close worlds, questions open them. Someone who asks questions, their experience of their own reality is open. That means they're in a dynamic system. But somebody who just, is only interested by the answers, they're living in a closed system, a closed systematic state of mind. So you got to turn yourself into an open system. This doesn't mean you don't, it means that you have to wonder about what does growth mean for not just your care, your name and your personality, but for you as a being, right, as a biochemical or organism, and simultaneously a sort of abstract, um, psychic entity. That means you exist as a character in a story behind your eyes. And so how and that character is your ego. Okay, the question should be is that can an idea own an object? Can an idea own consciousness? Or does consciousness own everything that's in it? Excuse me, does awareness own everything that it's conscious of? So that's the question. Like I could say, right, my name is, first name is Amin, Amin. So I can say this is Amin's consciousness, okay, or do you know, or Mr. Within is a construct within Amin's consciousness. But the point is, it's not that Amin owns the consciousness. The idea of me is also within my consciousness. So it's like this is consciousness is Amin. It's like the idea of me, the subject doesn't own the awareness. The subject is found in the awareness. The awareness is superior. So now that I've established that we have an inner outer life and how it even correlates to our brain and our, from in front of our eyes outer life, behind our lives outer, inner life. So this means in front of your eyes there's an outer world to deal with, and behind your eyes there's an inner world to deal with. And so when somebody says emotional life, they're asking you, how are you dealing with your inner life, with your inner world? What does your inner world look like? Now, to understand your inner world or the nature of your mind, first thing is to it's like Fight Club. First rule about Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. Same thing. It's like first rule of trying to get to know your inner realms is to realize you might not be able to know it. First, you got to accept that fact. You got to like probabilize defeat, and then victory comes easy. So, if I wonder where my emotions are coming from, they're coming from a vision I have of the future. So, my future self is motivating me. Level one was the self, level two was the species, level three is the world, level four is the system admin. So once you have solved the problems of yourself, then you move on to the problems of the species. Once you have solved the problems of the species, you move on to the problems of the world. Once you have solved the problems of the world, you're left with, in some sense, solving your own problem with the system admin. And once you solve your own problem with the system admin, you are left in a moment that is no longer being owned by an object or a subject. You become the fascination of that which moves everything that you are at all. So my emotional life is completely influenced by how in the future I see incredible potentials to humanity. That means my mind has shown me such advanced versions of the human species. I've even written it in my sci-fi, okay, that I have kind of been left speechless, and there's nothing in 2025 that can happen that could make me feel like the future is not going to be great. You see, it's the advancement of humanity in the presence of the greatest outcome of reality. We must not honor, like, think of it this way, an incredible spectrum of an honor system is going to be established for the future generations. I've talked about this in the educational system. The idea of teacher student is going to disappear, and everybody, like a video game, is going to be a class of an explorer with an endlessly growing rank. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna play another song. As much as I love this song, but I'm vibing with this other song right now. It might be hard to speak over, but I'm gonna give it a try. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have established that there's an inner life and outer life. We've established that the emotional life has to do with coordinating what the future of the outer life, and the inner life. Do you understand? My emotions center around my values and how they change, right? So the emotional life has to do with the shift in our inner values. But the logical life, which is brilliant, which is a brilliancy of its own as well, is in some sense has to do with precision. Now, this is where I can totally say there's different preferences of human minds. Like, it's as if back in the day, some people wanted to fight with a sword, some people wanted to fight with an arrow and a bow, right? Like, both are understandable. So you got to find your own style of activation as an intelligent organism here on this earth. But I'm saying that the logical life is like swordsmanship, and learning logic is like learning swordsmanship. Okay. And the whole point of swordsmanship is piercing accuracy. Okay. That's the whole point of swordsmanship. Okay. That you're in a situation that whoever's faster and more accurate wins. Do you understand? Faster means you have more space to decide. So imagine, in different talks I've given the same metaphor. Imagine you were the child of this like next level swordsman, and your father, after the 70th battle, died in battle. Okay. For example, just no, this is just fictional and hypothetical. No, wait, you know, stuff for the. Anyways, where I'm going with this is imagine so that kid comes home and they come to the house of the mother and the child and they give the mother like the sword of the father, and the mother hides the sword, puts it on a shelf, so one day the child can, when he's worthy, like he can like hold the sword. Now this child is so upset that he goes and walks into the forest, and strangely this forest has trees that are very close to each other, all vertical. Okay. And what this child does is he finds this strangely this he steps on this stick that is really shaped like a sword, and he picks it up and he starts practicing with the trees, and he gives out his rage, his tears, as he grieves in that way. But every day, after he does he quickly just lives his life properly and comes back into training and starts training in the forest to the degree that he had mastered being able to hit all the angles of the trees and even jumping from the trees from one another, and even hitting, like he had even visualized if there was a giant, how he would jump off from the trees to attack it. You understand? And so that kid was doing all of that with a stick, right? Until one day the same kingdom is at war, and his mother runs and gives him the sword, and he makes sure his mother gets away, right, with all the people. He makes sure the people are safe, and then he runs into the battlefield. Okay? And when he's running into that battlefield, a strange feeling comes over him, as if, why is he so nervous? And he suddenly stabilizes and starts walking towards the battlefield, calmly observing everything. As he's doing, he begins to see that the different soldiers in the battlefield and the army are running at each other at different speeds. Okay? And he realizes that they're not trees anymore that don't move. These are creatures that fight back, right? But he remembers how his speed can also be used for defense, right? And in the same way, he had strengthened his hand. Imagine like you holding a stick and slamming it as hard as you can at a tree, and you're strengthening your grip. It's like he had understood in some sense that the same speed can, like, so I'm pretty much telling you it's like a sort of training. Anyways, there was a point to this story, okay? He cultivated his inner life caught up to his outer life, or his outer life reactivated in a new context of his inner life, and he updated as a being. Okay, but I'm saying anyways, there's a logic. Oh yeah, I remember. Sorry, the logic is like a sword. Okay, but it is a sword that is limited to the known variables in any situation. That means if you're a swordsman and you're fighting three people at the same time with swords, you can't account for the archer in the tree. Okay, do you know what I mean? You got to like either run away or something, or hide. Do you know what I mean? Or in some sense like kill one of the soldiers and get their shield or something. You know what I mean? So at some point there's unknown variables that enter that logic can't account for, but he has to reconstruct itself, re-update, like account for eventually, right? In regards to the logical life, it is wondering about the sequence of events in reality. I think everything is this. Like, for example, when I listen to somebody else speak, every word they say is like painting a picture, and my mind's like, okay, how did that image connect to this image to that image as they're speaking? Same thing with reading as well. All those people who love reading have unlocked their inner cinema. And the only way you can enjoy it really is by reading fast. Then the word concepts animate into a film. It's all about aligning the speed of your inner life to your outer life. For example, somebody's inner life could be like, yo man, I expect to be like, to be this and that by this time, and that exactly, do you know? And then when they're not that, so what are the options? Either you adjust yourself to the event, okay, or you reshape the event. Do you understand what I mean? And the wisdom is that we have to adjust ourselves when the world changes. If like suddenly a meteor comes or whatever, everybody has to go live on Mars or something, like we have to adjust to that. Okay. So some situations the self adjusts to the world, some situations in the inner realms you can readjust the world. So I could be like, I expect everybody to act like an advanced being, and somebody doesn't act like an advanced being, or even I don't act like an advanced being. And what does this mean? It just means that the inner realm has to align to the outer realm, to the speed of the outer realm now. So the logical life is calculating the value, a sort of linearized spectrum of value. Also, it's a hierarchy as well, inside a hierarchy, right? But the inner life has to do with abstract possibilities that can also reflect emotionally. So I guess that's it. And so since there aren't any questions in the chat section, I guess, you know, people don't wonder, it's everything's clear. My whole point is that right now, if somebody says, "What is your emotional life like?" I say the emotions come and go quickly because I have given myself a specific. I have selected a specific purpose, which means I've selected a specific way to extract value from this life. Okay, that's what it means to have a purpose. Okay, it means that at some point you realize two people can look at the same work of art and one of them gets offended and one of them doesn't, one of them loves it, one of them hates it. So you realize it's not about the work of art. The work of art is technically meaningless. It is our eyes that give meaning, that put meaning there. And the issue is that when we're giving something real an abstract meaning, or when we're giving something abstract a real meaning, right? So the whole biggest thing about humanity is that it has this inner realms and outer realms, but the issue is how do we sequence ourselves in the outer realms? And as a user in the system, what is the most advanced activation protocol, right? So the main operating system is test. Once you realize the world of your ego code was limited. See, talking about divinity is the matters of the heart. Talking about advanced civilizations is the matters of the mind. We can't be illogical and expect an advanced civilization, but we can expect that, you know, human beings are creatures that fundamentally are not just being judged and tested on, but are beings that make decisions. These decisions end up shaping events. Okay? So right now, the most important thing is, imagine like a live stream. 8 billion people right now on the planet are verbs and making decisions right now. Now, so the whole thing about advancement of human life is logically, or let me say it this way, it's like when we think about it, we're like, okay, how are these human beings making decisions? And it's either fueled by emotion, like reactive emotion, or it's fueled by, like patient logical analysis. Okay. That's what human decisions are. Like they're like, you don't understand how many salesmen they've been. Like imagine like a refrigerator salesman, and the refrigerator salesman's like, there's this like person, like couple, right? And the refrigerator salesman's like, yo sir, it's like, hello sir, hello madam, see this refrigerator, it's like we found it out of nowhere, and when you open the freezer there's like a portal to another dimension. We don't know how it works, but it's on sale now, right? And so the guy explains how this is such a futuristic refrigerator from the future. And then suddenly the couple looks at each other and they're like, sorry, we don't like the color. And the salesman's like, okay, I gave them this incredible logical explanation of how this is like a next level buy. But they were like, we don't like the color. So that means they fundamentally, their decision came down to how they felt. And keep in mind, you could be the smartest person and still emotionally decide something. You know, it's like, yo, man, when Einstein went to buy ice cream, was he like analyzing, yo, man, what is the physics behind ice cream? Do you know what is the physics behind the flavor? Why does the flavors taste that way? No, man, he's like, just give me the chocolate chip, yo, and that's it, for example. Right? So I'm saying that I'm pretty much saying he's some things emotionally we're deciding it makes sense. It doesn't need deep analysis, but some things that require deep analysis, if we're emotionally deciding, then it's all we're in the error zone, right? And I've realized, I mean, on some level, yes, other people's emotional realities are not our responsibility, but other people's greatness is our responsibility. So if their emotional reality can make them great, it is our responsibility, technically. You see, my idea is that it's like, imagine there's 8 billion advanced tools on earth right now, but these tools don't know how to be used or where to be used, or like where their talent truly needs to be. Okay, right now we're in this kind of paradigm. Okay, the human species has intelligence, but it's scattered. We have hyper information. Everybody is informed, like information expansion, but we don't have understanding. That because everybody has their own DNA and in their own unique world, inner world, private inner world, right? It's like we're not at that point yet where everybody has the capacity to acknowledge that we're all a human species. You understand? That means they're like, yo, people have been fighting over their color of skin for centuries. And I'll be like, how ridiculous. First of all, as a being, we are probably red colored. Okay, there's more red to us than whatever our skin color is, right? And we have everybody has the same color skeleton, everybody has the same color blood, everybody, like, it's all red. You know what I mean? We all breathe the same oxygen. What, just because the skin is different? Why don't we fight over hairstyles next? It's like, yo, man, anybody who's combed their hair back, that's against humanity. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we could fight over hairstyles. It's like, all the bald people on the planet can gather around and just like go anti-hair. You know what I mean? Like, that would be an effed up movie. But what I'm saying is, really, the whole point of life is, it's like a dictionary. You can't, like, people who want everything in life to be the same as them, they want to clone the world. I truly believe deep down, underneath all discrimination is an urge to clone one's reality. I don't know, maybe some academics in the future can, help me out with that statement. But anyways, where I'm going with this is, what is your emotional life's destination? What is your logical life's destination? My logical life's destination is like, okay, man, you're a biological organism. You're in this world for some time, in this system. It's important how every moment happens, right? And why it happens. And at some point you leave, and that's it. And then there's a review procedure in the afterlife. So I believe everything that we're doing is being logged. Why we're doing things is being logged. That means that the most important thing, the smartest people, they have put the affairs of their heart in order first. Which means, if they ask you what is truly important, you won't say it's not the future of humanity. It is sacred. It is not sacred in the sense that it's equal to the divine. It's not like that sacred, but it is an honor to be a member of the human species. In the same way, if like you could think of it this way, Tony Stark in an Iron Man suit, you are like a character in a story, your ego, but you're also a consciousness in a biological human suit. It's made of, you're in a carbon suit. Iron Man was in an iron suit, you're in a carbon suit. Okay, so everybody is in a karmic suit. We're all in a world, and I don't think it's a bad idea to end all wars through realization that the human species is exploring reality for the first time. You know, if they're like Mr. Within, all these world leaders who are still alive who did like criminal acts or who did wars, like how should we view them? And I will be like, we need to view every person being imperfect. Nobody's perfect. But we have to also ask ourselves, is the perfect possible? And if it is, what, like, do you understand? For me, evil is a waste of time when there's something better that can be done. To me, I think that world leaders should just, like video game companies should be hired by the UN to replicate the exact military power of all nations. And instead of people dying, the world leaders who their egos have collided, right, go and play this video game, and whichever world leader loses in the video game, that is the exact replica of the military of each nation. Pretty much, I have this philosophy where all violence needs to go into cyberspace. All physical violence needs to translate into cyberspace. If two people want to fight in the future, they put on virtual reality goggles and they fight in giant robot suits. Okay, they fight like real men. You know, what is it? A fist fight is not real men. That's like ape level. You know, to go into like giant robot suits with like light beam swords and stuff like that, and then like settle things that way. That's the true. You know. Anyways, both of these are a requirement. These are both abilities of your system. We can treat the biological body as hardware, we can treat the psychology as software, and we can treat the awareness to it in some sense as the user. So in some sense, it's like I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, but I'm an awareness that is aware of all of them, that is using them, that is reanimating the inspiration of the whole moment as an energetic being by selecting a direction. So, anyways, and there, when your emotional life doesn't match your like logical life, it means like your inner life doesn't match your outer life. And let me tell you an example. So in your inner life, imagine you do someone a favor and you're kind to someone. Okay, and when you're kind to someone, imagine you have an ego about it and you expect kindness back. Okay, and when they don't give you kindness, you suddenly, what happens when they don't give when you in your inner realms you expect that person to be kind to you, but when they're not being kind to you, the inner emotional life's expectation did not sync with the outer life's actual occurrence. So that's when suddenly, technically, there's an it's like if you were in a giant robot suit, there would be like alert, alert, there would be alarms going off, right? That means your value system doesn't align with the outer event, the outer actual event that's happening. So this can happen, but the way I treat it is that dictating, instead of me constantly driving myself as a vehicle, I've kind of come to the simplest way I am. And when I'm simple, I can notice complexity formations and probabilities to complexity. But if I treat myself as a complex, like you don't understand. Having an ego might feel good, but it is so limiting that you'll laugh about it one day. What I mean by this is that the idea of ourself is we're living in a culture that makes us self worship. It makes us obsessed with ourselves, and we have to, because we have to biologically survive. But at the same time, the fascinating thing about reality is the greater problems ahead. Do you understand? That means for me, if they say, "Hey, man, do your emotional problems fascinate you more?" Or do your own problems fascinate you more, or do the problems of the species fascinate you more? I'll be like, you kidding me? Like, I don't even care for my own problems, because the problems in the world are so much more bigger that it's like at some point you don't even have time. It's like a luxury to be able to think you have problems, because the world is in such a vast situation. Do you know? That means what I mean by this is, imagine there's like these giant black, like shadows, or like imagine I mean, that's too fantasy. Imagine these giant robots are destroying skyscrapers. These giant aliens are like, let me say, these giant robots are destroying skyscrapers, right? In all major cities around the world, okay, randomly, and it's as if like your neighbor is like arguing with you because I don't know your pet went into their lawn or something. You'd be like, my problems don't matter. I'm going to go try to see what is causing, what is attacking my macro value system, my species. I'm telling you, whenever you hear the word my species, you should feel an honor. You should feel some sort of honor signal. You should feel like as if, yo, I'm a human species. It's like my species matters. Now, right now, level one, I said, was the self. So you imagine somehow solved all the problems with yourself. Then you realize, okay, the next game is like all those group projects in our schools prepared us for, right? Which was in some sense to realize that it's about the survival of a species, not just the survival of one person. So ethics becomes important when you want to build an advanced system with 8 billion beings in it. Okay? And so we need to begin first originating ethics councils of so many different cultural fields right now. You don't understand. And we need to usher the species into speciesism in the same way, like samurai had honor, knights in medieval times had an honor. You as a human being, we're not like in that kind of war. We're all civilized now and intelligent beings, and we can resolve conflicts internally rather than externally. But the whole point of it is, what in honor of what are we living right now? Do you know? Like, sure, you could look at an Englishman and be like, they're living for the honor of the queen, right? But at the same time, like, excuse me, are we just cherry picking honor here? Or is it that we look at our design, we're a human being, that means we're part of the human kingdom, and in some sense, the human honor, right? So everybody should have has to unlock some sort of majestic honor for the human design, right? And we unite over that, and we surpass nationalism. We usher ourselves into a transnational era, right, where we identify with our species more than we identify with where we physically are located. You understand? This doesn't mean we devalue nations. This doesn't mean we're forgetting about nationalism. It just means nations all become sub nations of the nation of humanity, which purely identifies that if you have a human DNA, if you're a human, you have the human design. You are a human being. You're part of the human empire. But the human empire is not something that it has leaders that control it. It's all about the advanced activation of a species, which leads them to their greatest strategy to indefinitely bypass extinction. Like, I've come up with my own personal strategy. I call it Civilization 2.0. But to me, the what happens to humanity is more important than what happens to myself. What happens to the world is more important than what happens to humanity. What God wants to happen is more important than what the world wants to happen. You see? So these are the four levels to this world game we're in. Okay? World rule. And so your emotional life and your logical life have to do with how you, as a known entity in an unknown dynamic system, are interpreting it. And you can judge people like nouns, be like, yeah, that person's a good person. I see them as a good noun archetype. I see them as a bad noun archetype. You could cherry pick archetypes for people and have like solidify them as impressions in your mind, or you could truly understand that every person is a verb and no noun can enslave them. So if you think you're a fool, a noun has enslaved you. If you think you're a genius, a noun has enslaved you. If you think you're smart, a noun has enslaved you. If you think you're stupid, a noun has enslaved you. But if you realize we are an unknown verb in an unknown noun, and a certain sector of our experience of reality is known, then the fascination behind it all moves it all automatically. That means God is watching over how great we can be because we were designed by the greatest. Never forget it. Anyways, thank you for listening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Auzubillah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Firli, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins I am conscious and unconscious of. My Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive my species for all the sins it is conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina sirata mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the most advanced guide us in the most advanced way to the most advanced. Technically, as a simulated being, we're here to, in some sense, notice the original return. It's very fascinating. Anyways, thank you for listening.